Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. Today on the program,
a defender of human rights.
Marami pong hindi nangyayaring hindi makatarungan sa ating bayan.
A staunch advocate of justice and the rule of law.
Problema kasi sobrang laganap ang korupsyon sa ating bayan.
His family stood up against the dictatorship, and now he's fighting a new battle, the senatorial race.
Ako po si Chel Diokno, kumakandidato sa pagka-senador para isulong ang katarungan.
His take on key issues like the water crisis and the country's withdrawal from the International Criminal Court.
We need to get to the bottom of this. There have been conflicting explanations given by different agencies.
Will Filipino voters give another Diokno a chance at the Senate? Senatorial candidate Chel Diokno joins us live.
thank you for joining us. I'm Pinky Webb. His family name resonates to those who lived under a former president's dictatorship era. His father, a former senator, became one of the most potent voices in defending human rights. This senatorial candidate is a longtime lawyer and a human rights advocate, worked outside the political arena, became a university law dean, and served as chairman of the Free Legal Assistance Group. Spurred by a family legacy of pushing and advocating justice, he wants to take his legal battles to a whole new level if he wins a Senate seat. But will the family name be enough to boost his chances of winning? Let's go straight to the source of the story, senatorial candidate Chel Diokno. Attorney, good to have you again.
Yes,
good to see you.
Having me.
How have you been?
Oh, all right. It's been tiring, but okay naman.
Your standings have been improving in the latest Pulse Asia surveys. Let's take a look at that. You have been improving from 26 to 35. That's in December. To 22 to 27 in February. What do you attribute this to?
I think it validates that the people are really looking for justice. You know, this is not really a question of personalities. It's a question of the issues that we're bringing. And when I go around and talk about justice, it resonates among the people because we all understand how it feels to be treated unjustly.
When you talk about justice, what do you tell them? At paano ko kayo nagpapakilala?
Ay, nagpapakilala ko bilang isang tagapagtanggol. Ayoko magpakilalang abogado at baka mapagkamalan pang abusado o di kaya abugago. At when I talk about justice, I really talk about the day-to-day injustice that we all experience. Halimbawa,
Such as?
Yung sobrang pagtaas ng presyo ng bilihin, yung panlalait sa mga kababaihan. These are things that people experience every day.
I want to get to that because you talk about anti-poor laws in a lot of your interviews, and I wanted to dig deeper into that. But I still want to talk about your campaign. You actually tapped your son, Director Pepe Diokno, to do what is called a campaign makeover. Is that so? And then
I don't know if you would call it a campaign makeover, but he chose my color.
He chose your color, which is mint green.
Yes.
And mint green stands for what?
It's something fresh, something new, and that's what we need in the Senate.
Did your son teach you how to modify, change, improve, how you talk to people? Ganun ba? Did it go that far?
Hindi naman ganon, but he did give me some suggestions.
Such as?
And it was really a big transition for me. Because I'm used to speaking to people, but mostly my audiences have been lawyers and law students. Talking to the public, lalo na yung masa, is something new. And it took a while for me to adjust.
Kahit na kilala kayo sa flag? Or sa
Oo,
Free
dahil
Legal Assistance
iba yung pag-uusapan mo, halimbawa yung karapatang pantao, at to a small group of clients, at iba yung magsasalita ka sa harap ng 5,000 or 10,000 people.
Sanay ka na?
Medyo.
Yeah.
Sanay na
It
rin.
takes some getting used to, and I think once you're used to it, tuloy-tuloy na siya, no?
Yeah.
Okay, you talked about, pag sinasabi kasi in a lot of your speeches and who you are, it's really about justice and freedom. But very telling was something I saw on Twitter very recently that grade 7 ka pa lang ata, ipinaglalaban mo na yung justice and freedom. We saw this in my grade 7 yearbook. I think you said our teacher told us to write something good about Marcos New Society. I told her I couldn't, and so she told me to write what I wanted. And here's what you wrote. Do you remember that? Well, I'm sure because binigyan mo siya ng ano. So, Jose y Chel Diokno, tatanungin ko mamaya, nagtatanong sila, bakit daw Chel? There are people who follow their conscience and voice. Maybe it's better you read it. Do you remember it?
Sure. There are people who follow their conscience and voice out their opinion at the risk of their freedom and for justice to be upheld. These I believe in, for they are the people who love freedom and will die for it.
How can somebody think of that grade 7?
You know, I grew up during martial law, so I felt the injustice of my father being picked up from our house, put in jail for no reason, no case, no warrant, no nothing. And that really affected me. And that made me grow up very quickly. So for someone who was 11 years old at the time he was arrested and 13 when he was released, I already experienced what it felt to be treated unjustly. And I knew I was going to be a lawyer that early.
You knew.
Yeah.
That's where the path, that's the path you were going to take.
Yeah.
Hence, at grade 7, you were speaking like a fourth-year high school student. Let's talk about the anti-poor laws. You've mentioned a number of them. You have excise tax, the VAT, also the rice supply, and the war on drugs. I want to center first on the war on drugs because you obviously are saying that the poor people are the ones being victimized by the war on drugs. Tell us more about that.
Well, by the count of the Supreme Court in the case we filed as of end of 2017, there were 20,322 had been killed in the war on drugs. Most of them are poor. And that really is really very sad because why is the government going after the poor when they should be going after the syndicates, the people who are responsible for bringing in billions of pesos of shipments of drugs into the country? And it's also very concerning because it's really not just a war on the poor. This is a war on our legal system. It's a clear attempt to replace the justice from the courts with justice from the barrels of guns. When you have that many people being killed, what is the use of the courts? And every day that more people are killed, every day the law gets less and less meaning for the people, it will reach a point where it will really have nothing at all, no value at all. And what will happen to our country then?
You have the ICC. This also needs to be talked about because personally I wonder how this could even possibly progress. Number of schools of thought, one, we were never really part of the ICC, according to Malacanang. Then number two, they question if we were never part of the ICC, why withdraw in the first place? Do they have jurisdiction? Can they have jurisdiction? And very recently, Secretary Sal Panela was saying that people, Filipino citizens who might go abroad to testify against the president could possibly be barred from leaving, and those who want to come here to investigate could possibly be deported as well.
Well, fake news yan, yung sinasabi nilang we were never a party to the ICC. The Philippines is a signatory to the Rome Statute that created the International Criminal Court, and that was also ratified by the Senate. Now, why is the ICC so important? Because we have what we call presidential immunity in the Philippines. In other words, you file a criminal case against the president while he's in the palace, it will not prosper because they'll say, he's immune from suit while he's sitting. And that's why the ICC is so important, because under the principle of complementarity, when you cannot prosecute an official in your country, then you should be able to prosecute him there. And we agreed to that.
Yeah.
The government agreed to that. This is really a setback for human rights in the country because you're talking about so many people being killed, over 20,000 people being killed. This is, to me, a very clear example of a crime against humanity. And it deserves to be brought out, and the people who are victims deserve justice.
But we need to go back to, I know you're saying that we are a member, we signed the Rome Statute that formed the ICC, but also the defense was, We did. That's not being questioned, but it was never published in the official gazette,
Hindi
right?
naman required na i-publish ang treaty.
Isn't it?
Hindi. Ang mga local laws required yan, pero ang treaty hindi.
So you don't buy that at all?
No, not
Okay.
at all.
And what about somebody from here having to go abroad to possibly testify against, on the war on drugs, or somebody from outside coming in and being deported? What rights do people have?
Well,
in truth?
just as the president has invoked his freedom of speech, he said, I should be able to say what I want, and any Filipino should be able to say what they want in any forum, whether
Yeah.
inside the country or out.
Even if Malacanang says this could possibly be an illegal act, or they could perjure themselves outside of the
How
country.
could it be an illegal act to speak what you know, to speak the truth?
Uh-huh.
I don't see what they're talking about.
So how do you see this progressing, or do you not see this progressing?
You know, I don't really understand why the government even withdrew, because they cannot escape liability for what happened from 2016 up to March of this year. Kahit na may withdrawal yan, prospective ang ibig sabihin nun. And there has to be accountability for what happened. If not within our country, then in the ICC.
But that's my point, Attorney. If we are saying, if the government is saying we're never part of it, we're not going to take part of it, we were never a member, how can it actually progress? Do you see any signs that this could prosper?
Yeah, it will not be an obstacle to the ICC continuing with the case and taking jurisdiction over it. Of course, we can expect that the government is going to say that and then probably stick to that and say, oh, wala yan, wala yan. But they will have to deal with the international community.
How big of a deal is this?
It's a big deal because more than 100 countries have signed the Rome Statute.
War on drugs, you will be speaking before the United Nations Commission on Narcotics tonight regarding the war on drugs. The first question possibly would be, how would you describe the president's war on drugs or the government's war on drugs?
Well, I would describe it as being completely unconstitutional and violative of due process. You see, the whole war on drugs began with Command Memorandum Circular 16/2016 that was signed by then Chief De La Rosa on his very first day in office. That's July 1, 2016. That is what operationalized the lists, the drug lists. That is what operationalized Tokhang. But if you read that circular, it expressly authorizes what they call neutralization and negation of suspects. And there's no legal definition of neutralize. But if you talk to police officers,
Ano ba ibig sabihin ng neutralization?
sa kanila, alam nila ibig sabihin ng neutralization.
Which is?
Kasama doon ang pagpapatay. And the other thing is that those lists are not evidence-based. Even the narco list issued by the president is not evidence-based. That is based on so-called intelligence information.
Right.
And we don't even know what kind of intelligence information constitutes that, is the basis for that list. Now, why is that so concerning? Because it's so easy for a person's name to be put on that list who's really innocent. And we have had several cases. People have come to us where we have seen that happen. It is not, it goes against our Constitution, it goes against presumption of innocence, right to due process, all the rights that we guaranteed.
However, they say that due process is actually you being charged before the ombudsman, possibly an administrative case and maybe a criminal case eventually, and that is your time to answer the allegations against you.
That's the point. Instead of using lists which have been weaponized, they should just file the cases. No need for the list. The last time we've used lists in our country was during the Japanese occupation when the Japanese forces went after the
But they did
Filipinos
file
who
a
were
case.
fighting.
They did file administrative
during
cases.
You mean this time?
Yeah, this one.
I'm not aware if they have or not. They claim to have filed.
Yeah,
I don't know
before
if they have.
the office of
but
the
if they
ombudsman.
have, then that's fine. Why do they have to resort to lists in addition?
Wag nang ilathala. You're saying no need na isa-isahin pa yung pangalan.
Sampahan na lang ng kaso.
All right, we'll be taking a short break. This is The Source on CNN Philippines. Still to come, is it about time to restore the death penalty? Senatorial candidate Chel Diokno will still be with us after the break. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today is Senatorial candidate Chel Diokno. So very recently, attorney, the PIDEA was able to seize ₱1 billion worth of high-grade shabu inside a home in Ayala, Alabang. Hours, I believe, before that, they were able to seize in a buy-bust operation 300 million pesos worth of shabu. So when you think about this, in a way, do you congratulate PIDEA for this successful catch?
Yes, kudos to PIDEA. But I hope it doesn't end there. I hope it ends with the conviction. Because that's really the whole purpose of all of these seizures of drugs, is to hold people accountable for what they're doing. And that's what we lack in our country, really, is accountability.
How can there be accountability when in that home, the people caught, I believe, were 3 Chinese, and I think there was a Filipino interpreter. So you have someone like Senator Ping Lacson, who says, WTF. Let's show that tweet of Senator Ping Lacson. Sabi niya, 1 billion worth of shabu seized by PIDEA in Alabang. How? Well, did that volume pass through customs? So actually, that's what I wanted to talk about. While you said you congratulate the PIDEA, question remains on these drugs still coming into the country.
That has to be looked into, and people have to be held accountable. In previous experiences, we've seen that those people who were in charge of customs weren't even investigated or prosecuted. I think they were transferred or promoted. That's not the kind of accountability we need. This is a very good opportunity for the government to really bear down on all these people who are responsible for bringing in all the drugs. The president keeps talking about you're destroying millions of lives of Filipinos, but where is the accountability? Where's the punishment?
Yeah. And if you catch yung mga bantay in a house or yung tinatawag niyo mga anti-poor, it doesn't really solve the problem of drugs.
You need to go after the masterminds, the people who really are behind this.
Another story that came out very recently, and I'm hoping to get your interpretation, and I need to understand this better, is the Sandigan Bayan granted the motion for leave of court by Estrada and Napoles to file a demurrer to evidence in their plunder case on the PDAP scam. In layman's terms, attorney, ano ho ba ibig sabihin ito?
Okay. First, let's talk about what is a demurrer. A demurrer is really just a motion to dismiss the case on the ground that the evidence is not enough to convict. Now, what do you mean when you ask for leave? It's a motion for permission to file the demurrer. So what was granted was not yet the demurrer. The case has not yet been dismissed. What was granted by the Sandigan Bayan was just permission for them to file a written demurrer or a written motion to dismiss.
So nagpapaalam yung defense na magfa-file sila. Papayagan mo ba kami sa Sandigan Bayan na mag-file ng demurrer of evidence? Tama ho ba yun? And the Sandigan Bayan said, okay, you can file.
Yes, but it doesn't mean that the dismissal will follow.
Yes.
In fact, in all the cases that I've handled in 30 years, courts have granted motions for leave, but not granted the demurrers.
So this is not unusual.
No, it's a typical defense tactic.
It's a defense. It's the strategy for the people of the accused, for the defense. So after this, when they file the leave, what happens? Paano yun?
Well, if they, like here, since they were granted leave, they are given a certain period of days to file the demurrer. The prosecution can reply or oppose it, and then it's submitted for decision.
I
The
see.
court will decide.
The case of Senator Bong Revilla, could that possibly affect this filing of leave for the filing of the demurrer of evidence on Senator Jinggoy Estrada?
Well, it might indirectly influence the decision, but I don't think it will really have a big impact on that. A lot depends on whether the evidence in these cases of Jinggoy are the same or similar to what was presented as against Bong Revilla.
Water crisis, want to get your reaction on that, and the Kaliwa Dam?
No, it's about time we find out. The people have to know what really caused this water shortage. And we need as well to find out what alternatives are open to us to address the problem of water. The Kaliwa Dam, I have so many questions about it because it's a Chinese loan agreement. When apparently I just saw an article the other day that the government had been offered a better project by a Japanese firm, which would not cause the inundation of the villages, which would have less environmental impact. So why are we agreeing to something more onerous, and why are we agreeing to something that is going to affect directly the lives of so many of our brothers and sisters. The problem is that the government has been so secretive about the agreements with China. And that has to change. If we really want to show the people that we're concerned and we want to do the best for them, then why the lack of transparency?
You know, there was a press conference, there was a press briefing yesterday in Malacanang talking about this Kaliwa Dam, wherein the Finance Assistant Secretary Tony Lambino was talking about how this ODA with China has actually lowered the cost of the Kaliwa Dam, number one, from what I recall, Attorney, and number two, the questions on the kind of loan exposure the Philippines will have is actually by 2022, because of the ambitious Build program of the government, will only be about 4.8% of total exposure to loans as compared to Japan, which is double at about 9%. So pinaliwanag po nila, huwag kayong mag-alala, hindi tayo, walang Chinese debt trap na magaganap dito.
Madali magsalita, ipakita na lang nila yung agreement. Why have they not shown that agreement, not even to the Senate? I understand that the Senate, some senators, soon after the visit of the Chinese premier, filed a resolution calling on the government to provide them with copies, but up to now they have not. Why the secrecy if that's really true?
We'll be taking another short break. We'll be right back. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our guest today, Senatorial candidate Chel Diokno. Your priorities in the Senate. What's the first bill you're going to pass if you win?
Well, there are several bills that I would like to pass. We have to address the problem of the slow pace of litigation. Grabe ang bagal na paglitis ng kaso sa atin. That is because we lack so many judges and we lack prosecutors. We need to fill those vacancies. 20% of judges' positions are vacant. 33% of prosecutors' positions are vacant. That's why it's so slow. Second, we have to make sure that the quality of our judges is beyond question.
How do you do that?
We have to have a more transparent process for choosing them that should be very open to the public, and there has to be a very deep background investigation of all of the applicants. Next, I really...
How about increasing their salaries as well? So that,
yes,
yeah.
their salaries have been increased, and in fact, they are probably better than most government positions. But the problem is that you compare them with the private practitioners, mababa pa rin. So it's very hard to attract the good guys and the good female judges. The other problem is it's really congested, our court dockets. We need to find a way, similar to maybe what Singapore has done, to create a court of arbitration for business and commercial disputes. So that yung away ng mga negosyante, hindi na nila dadalhin sa court, dadalhin nila sa arbitration.
Yeah.
No problem with the judge, because that judge is not appointed by a political process, but rather they're selected from a pool of experts. They don't come from any government position. And it's much faster. It will only take probably a year for that case to be decided.
So, sorry, why are we doing that?
Why aren't we doing that?
Yeah, why aren't we doing Why don't we have that, like a court of arbitration?
We have something similar for construction industry. We have the CIAC, the Construction Industry Arbitration Commission. But we don't have one for other kinds of commercial and business disputes.
Okay.
Singapore has that, and it has proven to be very helpful to them. I think we should do that here.
Okay.
In addition, we need to restore the confidence of the people in our justice system. Now, one way to do that is to make it more transparent. Require all justices to publish their salain. So there's no more question about access. And then second, make sure that the ombudsman clearly has the power to conduct lifestyle checks of justices and judges. Because we have to show the people that everything is above board, na walang lagayan at malinis ang hustisya.
Who should appoint the ombudsman? Because if it falls under the jurisdiction of the ombudsman, that's a big role to play. What do you think about appointing the ombudsman? Saan dapat manggaling yan?
You know, the Constitution is is the basis of that, and the Constitution provides that he or she is appointed by the President, and the same applies to our judiciary. Yeah. So that so much power, that appointing power, is too much centralized in one man, one person. That I think has to change, but we cannot change that until the Constitution is open. Until that happens, though, we can make the process more transparent. And I think Congress has a role to play there.
And Congress can pass a law on that. I just want to ask some questions from our Facebook. Irish Pilapil is asking Attorney Diokno, what's your stand on capital punishments like death penalty and lethal injection?
I am completely against the death penalty. I handled death penalty cases before when we had a law that allowed it. And based on our studies, it showed that those who were convicted and sentenced to death, most of them were poor. So it's also anti-poor. And even our Supreme Court in 2004 admitted that 70% of those handed down death sentences were wrongfully convicted.
Really?
Yeah.
So that's the Supreme Court saying
yes.
that?
Okay. So if we had about 1,000 death row inmates at that time, 700 of them were wrongfully convicted.
But you know, that question comes up because of the case of the girl in Lapu-Lapu. She was killed and skinned. So that brought up that want and that desire to restore capital punishment.
Well, we should punish
no?
the people responsible for that. We should punish them.
Okay.
But I'm totally against the death penalty as a matter of policy. And whatever the crime, I believe they will suffer more in life imprisonment than being killed.
What are your non-negotiables as a public servant?
My integrity, anything that has to do with dishonesty and with corruption, that's a no-no.
Why is it Chel?
You'd have to ask my mother. I asked her when she was still alive, and she said that when she was pregnant, she really liked a Shell advertisement on TV. And that's where my name came from.
Is that
but
so?
It's not pronounced Shell, it's pronounced
Chel.
As in Chel ka lang.
Chel ka lang dyan. Maraming salamat kay Attorney Chel Diokno. Sir, thank you. And of course, good luck to you, sir. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.